Order. The original question was that this bill be now read a second time, to which the honourable member for Bradfield moved as an amendment that all words after that be omitted with a view to substituting other words. The honourable member for Kennedy has moved as an amendment to that amendment that all words after House be omitted with a view to substituting other words. The question is that the amendment moved by the honourable member for Kennedy be agreed to, and I call the honourable member for Fowler.
Thank you, Speaker. I rise to speak on the Fair Work legislation amendments closing the loopholes bills 2023. Before I delve into this bill, I would like to make it clear that I support good industrial relations policy. Policies that would see a productive, engaged, diverse and flexible workforce, with employees and employers having the ability to agree and negotiate a fair income work environment and remunerations. No bill is perfect, and this is an example of one of them. The bill takes a radical approach in reforming the Australian workforce, which the government did not really take to the election and indicate to do so. This radical industrial relations reform has sent shockwaves through the economy and many businesses that are holding up our country. Many of us in this House are not industrial relations experts who can read through the hundreds of pages of the bill. Therefore, for me, this bill has been challenging to work through. The clock is not moving. Is that an issue?
Order. Could we start the time again, please?
So start again.
Thank you.
Therefore, for me, this bill has been challenging to work through. Many stakeholders, from small business owners to industry bodies, have reached out to share their perspectives and interpretation of the bill, with a mixture of amendments proposed to make beneficial changes, but some parts of the bill have remained murky on its intended purposes. I do hold concerns as to whether the amendments put forward will positively change industrial relations, or whether the complexities of the reform will stagnate the workforce, its viability and productivity, in a period where workforce shortages is a critical issue. Speaker, this bill will affect a large number of my Fowler constituents, both employers and employees. You see, Fowler is and always will be a working-class electorate, with data reporting that 43.6% of people are active in the labour workforce. Many individuals own their own businesses, whilst many others are working for their local businesses. Within the ever-evolving economy, the digital platforms are now also becoming a significant source of employment for my constituents. The bill promises to close loopholes which affect the most vulnerable people within the workforce. By dictionary, loopholes are ambiguous practices which can be used to circumvent rules or obligations. Fowler is one of the most disadvantaged electorates in Australia, with many individuals at various stages of vulnerability. People are struggling to pay their bills, put food on the table for their family, have a roof over their head and have a stable job. And so I stand here today in the shoes of my community who would be most impacted by this bill. Speaker, it's important that we close loopholes, but there must be a balance in how the government proposes to do so. My focus remains on the impacts on the livelihood of Australians and in particular small businesses, with the pressure of the cost of living. If the workplace reforms drive up consumer goods and services and the viability of businesses to keep up with changes. These points came up repeatedly when reviewing the provisions relating to employer-like reforms targeting the gig economy, wage theft and casual employment. I travelled to Melbourne recently for the Vietnamese Museum in Australia's Women and Unity celebration event, and was told by the taxi driver that Uber has now increased their fees, which would mean that he would have to pass on this increase to consumers by about $30. And for Uber Eats delivery, he said it'll be about $60. Again, this will have to be passed on to consumers, the end users. He asked me, how can the Australian government do this to working Australians at a time of the cost of living crisis by killing small business ability to operate? The gig economy is a relatively new phenomenon, with more and more digital platform entrepreneurs rising to the scene with apps that contract and provide services. Digital platforms create an on-demand workforce by the tips of people's fingers on mobile phones and any other devices. These platforms offer the opportunity for people to choose the hours they work, where they work and when they work. People simply value convenience of digital platforms, and contractors value the mutual flexibility. Therefore, individuals who sign up to provide their services on these digital platforms and choosing to do so with the knowledge of the flexibility of the platforms provide are perceived as independent contractors, not employees. However, the government has coined the term employee-like and embedded this in the bill. And the Fair Work Commission will be given powers to make minimum standard orders affecting the conditions for platform workers as they would be employee-like. While this sounds like a good idea, the danger starts with the broad definition of, quote, digital platform work, which captures virtually every single digital platform that offers some form of contracting service. Proposed Section 15N reads, quote, digital platform works means work performed by an independent contractor where the work is performed under a service contract through or by means of a digital labour platform, and payment is made for that work, unquote. If you interpret this definition, digital platform would effectively capture Uber, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Deliveroo, Menulog, Milkrun, Mabel, Airtasker, and many others. This proposed provision will provide the Fair Work Commission with a new jurisdiction to regulate digital platform work, which has been relatively untouched to date. We are talking about orders made by Fair Work Commission which can dictate penalty rates. And as I've already provided an example, Uber drivers and Uber Eats deliveries have already increased the fees to those that they contracted, but as the taxi driver in Melbourne explained, it will have to be passed on to the end users, you and I. For digital platform work that are designed purely for facilitating gig work, this policy may be perceived as an attack on the commercial arrangements of business owners and the self-employed. The essence of gig work is that people can be their own boss and can dictate their own schedule without the intervention of others, especially government. Contractors post their services on platforms like Airtasker and OneFlare, free for all to click to engage if they so wish. This is their prerogative. Speaker, we are treading dangerously towards the boundaries of a digital age that is functional and one that is dysfunctional by putting our hands into the gig economy. There may be some deterrence from entrepreneurs in the future to dabble in the digital space with the administrative burdens and legislative obligations that they will need to fulfil. Consumers would likewise be deterred from utilising digital platforms, as there will be a domino effect on price increases, which I've already indicated is happening. This may also trickle down to small businesses relying on digital platforms to sell their products or services. And as an example above is already taking effect in the space of Uber. I'm not convinced that these issues are adequately considered through these provisions, as the ministers have advised that small businesses are not affected, but there's a real chance that small businesses are not spared. However, I recognise the regulation of specific areas of digital platform work may prove beneficial, such as the care sector. I had the pleasure of meeting Australia's largest NDIS-registered online platform, HireUp's co-founders, Jordan and Laura O'Reilly, and their wonderful team. HireUp prides themselves on being an employer with a digital platform space and provides benefit to support workers who sign up and host organisations that provide the work. Support workers would join as casual workers who get paid in accordance with HireUp's level of hourly rates and would be covered by workers' compensation insurance. According to HireUp, if a support worker was to get injured, they will only receive approximately $1,000 under insurance on their disability support worker hire platform, as opposed to $2,600 under workers' compensation insurance. HireUp's digital platform structure is unique to others in the market, as they are committed to making sure support workers are not being taken for a ride and are paid commensurate to their level of work provided. This in turn ensures that there are high standards in the care sector. This is something that I strongly resonate with, as many constituents within Fowler are working within the care sector and deserve a safe and elevating working environment. And HireUp did also point out, and I acknowledge, that with the care sector, it does receive a huge amount of government funding through an NDI support model. It is therefore reasonable that there is regulation in this area for digital platform work, where a large percentage of funds come from taxpayers. If the government seeks to proceed with regulating the digital platform work, I'm of the view that it should be confined to the care sector and the definition be revised the same. Further, I understand that the government proposes to amend the definition of casual employee to include the consideration of real, substance, practical reality and true nature of the relationship in determining if there is an absence of firm advancement to continuing an indefinite work. The current Section 15A of the Fair Work Act provides for a contract-driven definition which states a worker is a casual employee if there is no firm advancement commitment to continuing an indefinite work according to an agreed pattern, and employer accepts the offer of employment on this basis. In essence, the totality of the relationship between the worker and the employer will need to be examined. Whilst I can appreciate that the government is trying to reduce the risk of workers being exploited and not being afforded rights as casual worker, there are some concerns with this particular amendment. I ask the government to consider the following. The Fair Work Act is already complex enough, so how does the government expect a layperson to understand the line in the bill, real substance, practical reality and true nature of the employment relationship? What does this actually mean? How do you define real substance? What's practical reality? What is meant by true nature of the employment relationship? These terms are so abstract and I would argue are difficult ideas for business owners and workers to decipher the legislative intentions. I had a constituent from Adenza Park, a small business owner, who voiced his concern about this section of the bill. He noted that, quote, "We are not wealthy. We do not have degrees in law or accounting. We're not HR experts. We're just Aussie battlers." Therefore, if the government intends for this to be included, I urge the Minister to spend time explaining and defining what they are talking about, specifically when they're referring to real substance, practical reality and true nature of the employment relationship, to help people and business owners like my constituents to understand their obligations. Has the government considered the uncertainty that small businesses may encounter for engaging independent contractors, as the definition will require examination beyond the contract? The same constituent, who I just mentioned, has further raised that this new proposed definition would reverse the certainty the High Court in Jamasek has provided to Australians by adding layers of complexity, liability and risk that many have not been may not well understood. The ruling in Jamasek centralised on examining the contract terms to determine the employment relationship. As I raised earlier, there is some good in this bill that needs to be acknowledged, such as the provisions for industrial manslaughter, family violence, discrimination, amendments to the Asbestos Safety and Eradication Act 2013 and wage theft. The provision of on wage theft in particular sends a strong message that employers who are not doing the right thing will face severe consequences if they continue to take advantage of hard-working employees. It will now be a criminal offence for employers to intentionally underpay employees, prosecutable by the Commonwealth Department of Public Prosecutions or the Australian Federal Police. This offence carries a maximum of 10 years imprisonment or the greater 3 times the amount of underpayment of over $1 million. Therefore, there are safeguards available. If employers self-disclose the conduct which may amount to wage theft, the employers would not be referred for criminal prosecution. Instead, a voluntary small business wage compliance code will be developed by the government and employers group. The business must give evidence of compliance with the code to ensure that they will not refer to FWO for criminal prosecution. In the event that a small business is referred to FWO due to suspected intentional wage theft, the FWO may enter into a cooperative agreement. These amendments are necessary to ensure that employers understand that they must treat their employees with the utmost human respect for their labour. This bill itself is a paradox and difficult to discern from. Accordingly, I call on the government to carve out the provisions mentioned above and place in a separate bill. Thank you, Speaker.
I thank